Hello, my astrology friends. This is Lada from astrolada.com, and we continue the 2025 astrology marathon. Today, my guest is Vedic sidereal astrology, Parvati. Hello, Parvati.
Hello, Lada. So nice to see you. Happy solstice.
Happy solstice as well. Thank you for participating. Your first year with us. You just joined us. You did your first interview a few weeks ago, and people said the best teacher ever. So I'm excited that you volunteered to show us and lead us through 2025 through Vedic sidereal perspective, because I know very little about that. I'm tropical astrologer. So thank you for volunteering. And Parvati is offering 10% off on some of her readings. I'll put a link below with description if you want to connect with her for the next 3 weeks. And Parvati, what do you have for us? Because our Western astrologer scared us a lot. What is your
Well,
perspective?
it's really interesting. I haven't watched any of the Western perspective. I just come from a Vedic perspective, but I'm sure as we go through this, many things might line up. They should line up, as we said a little earlier. Yeah, there's many paths to the truth. And to be honest, I had a really difficult time putting this presentation together because there's so much happening. It's crazy. So I put a little presentation together, and then I also have the charts. And what I did is I used both the Vedic chart as well as the chart from AstroDance. I think a lot of astrologers know astro.com. So I made those charts too, just so that you can see visually what it is that I'm going over. But we have a lot of shifts next year. Next year we have Saturn changing signs. We have Rahu Ketu, North Node and South Node changing signs. We have Jupiter changing signs. And it's all happening in the same year within a few months of each other. So it obviously indicates a time of great change in many major areas of life. So let's go ahead and jump in. Let me share my screen
Yeah,
here.
that's exactly what's happening in Western astrology, but we're one sign ahead of you guys in tropical, in sidereal. Plus the three outer planets that they're not using Vedic astrology, but they're also changing signs according to tropical zodiacs. So
Yeah, I had a look actually when I was researching this coming year, and Uranus is changing signs in the Vedic system as well.
okay.
So yeah, there's a lot of shifts going on. A lot. It's going to be a pretty crazy year, one like we've never seen. But it seems like as we go along, it just gets crazier and crazier. So this is my forecast, my presentation. Now, before all of this craziness starts, in up until March of next year, the planets are going to be still in the positions that they are now. And in the Vedic system, we have Jupiter in sidereal Taurus. We have Rahu and Ketu in the Pisces Virgo axis. And then we have Saturn in his Multrikona sign, where he's very strong in Aquarius. In February, of course, is Chinese New Year. And we're moving to the year of the snake. And that's also very symbolic. The year of the snake is all about transformation, all about shedding our skin, all about letting go of the old. Now, change is very difficult for most of us, right? Some people welcome it, but most people are very used to how things are, and it's difficult for them to let go. So my first bit of advice is the more you can let go and adapt to these new changes, the easier the ride will be. Now, in my forecast, I'm just talking about general mundane um, indications. because just doing the mundane indications, it was so much information. I'm like, how am I going to even structure this for everybody so that it makes, it flows good? So you have to obviously look at your own chart, see if where your planets are, see where your rising is, your moon sign is, what aspects are happening. And if you need some help with that, you can find me through AstroLada, of course, and schedule a reading. And then I'll look at your personal, how this year is going to affect your personal chart. Okay. So there's three main planetary shifts, but there's also Mars, Venus, and Mercury as well. So let's talk about the first three major planets. So the major planetary changes, okay? We have Saturn, we have Jupiter, and then we have Rahu and Ketu. Now, on the 29th of March, as I'm sure everybody knows, there is going to be a solar eclipse. This is the last solar eclipse in the Vedic system in Pisces and in Virgo. The day that Saturn moves into Pisces, right, he is going to meet five other planets, and actually seven planets if we take into account Neptune and Chiron as well. So this eclipse is pretty powerful, and I'm going to go into more detail, but just off the bat, the day that Saturn shifts into Pisces is the same day that Uranus shifts into Taurus. So we have these two major planets changing signs. As soon as he shifts, he's going to come upon a solar eclipse, and that is happening with Rahu, Sun, Moon, obviously, with a retrograde Venus that gets exalted in Pisces, and a retrograde Mercury, as well as Neptune right there in the close degrees.
Mhm.
And Chiron is a little bit further out, but it's still in Pisces. So it's a lot of karmic endings happening. It's a big ending. Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac. And with this eclipse, I do feel that there is some major world event. It could be a natural event. It could be also something to do with the world governments that's going to bring about an ending to how we know life and a new beginning. But it's going to take some time. And the reason it'll take some time is because Saturn is the planet that shows our karmas. It brings lessons, karmic lessons, and it moves very slowly. So it will take time to get used to these new energies, but around this time will be the beginning. Oftentimes with eclipses, you start to see things happening even before. It's not always that on that day something major happens. It could be, but it could be a little bit before, a little bit after. But from March till May, these 2 months are pivotal. Now,
Exactly.
yes,
It
I'm
shows in
sure
Western, exactly. And by
yeah.
the way, all those seven planets in Pisces, in sidereal, they are also there except except Chiron. They're also in Pisces in tropical because they're the last.
Wow.
And so it is exactly what I said, some big karmic
Yeah.
event, something that is like an ending. And I don't know if in Western astrology, Pisces connected to sickness and illness as well.
Yes,
That's I
yes,
don't know about Vedic.
hospitals. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. So the day after, now the day after the eclipse is what's called the Vedic New Year, right? It's called Chaitra Shukla Pratipad. And this is what we base the entire energy of the year on. This year, Chaitra Shukla Pratipad, the deity or the energy was Krodhi. And Krodha actually means anger. So it indicates war. And we saw what happened this year with all these wars and, just all this stuff. So this year, the Vedic New Year starts exactly after the eclipse, and the deity is Vishvavasu, and the planet associated to that deity is the sun. So the sun indicates leaderships, the government. So we are going to see a focus on lots of shifting of power. And immediately when Chaitra Shukla Pratipad, or the Vedic New Year, starts, we have a very special festival in India called Navaratri, which literally translates to the 9 nights of the goddess. So I think that's very auspicious that Navaratri happens right after this eclipse, because there's going to be a lot of prayers. There's going to be a lot of invoking the mother goddess energy straight after. I think it's going to be very helpful. I also want to add, like, before this eclipse starts, it is going to be in Pisces. And of course, Pisces does rule a lot of things, but one of the things it rules is high spirituality. So if you are in any kind of a position to hold, prayers with people, like prayer circles or meditation circles or things like that around this time, it also will be very helpful for you and your friends, your associates, because to seed that spiritual aspect of Pisces so that all these other significations are not so much the focus. There's a great potential for a rise in consciousness around this time. But when Saturn comes, right, Saturn tries to limit, Saturn tries to restrict. So there could be some backlash against those of us who are spiritual seekers. There could be some people that they're just skeptical, or they think it's woo woo, or things like that you could see happening in the media. So when Saturn moves into Pisces, it's going to be very, very, very close to Rahu. Now, Rahu is on its way out of Pisces and about to enter his own sign. The exact conjunction between Rahu and Saturn, and it's going to also involve Venus. Venus is going to be right there in that conjunction. Happens on April 21st. Now, I did some research, and the last time we had Saturn conjuncting Rahu in Pisces was in 1968.
Oh.
And we all know what happened in 1968. We had the assassination attempts, or the assassinations, actually, not, it happened, of both Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy. So
Mm.
this part is really, really lit up for me, because I do feel that next year there will be some attempts of assassination
Mm.
on our leaders. Because remember, the sun, right, is indicated for this new chapter, for this new year.
Can
So
I
that's,
ask, is in
yes,
Saturn and Rahu in Vedic astrology are both malefic, aren't they? So when they
yes.
come together, it's like because in Western astrology we can sugarcoat everything and give it positive view, but I know that Vedic is like Saturn and North Node together. It's danger, danger situation.
Yeah, it forms a very malefic yoga, and the element of Saturn is Vayu, which is the wind, right? So if you think about it, like Saturn's very thin, Saturn, it's the wind element, and Rahu is also the wind. So
Mm.
if anybody studies Ayurveda and understands the different elements in the doshas, the wind element is what creates instability, not only in the body, but everywhere, right? So the wind combined with the water, we could put those elements together. There could be higher typhoons, cyclones, things of that nature occurring. Um, Pisces is the ocean. So it's not so much, the wind drying up the ocean, right? Because the wind also dries things. It makes things brittle, causes things to be unstable, to break. It's a breaking energy. But, we could later on in the year see the drying up of the water element, and it could cause maybe floods in some places and droughts in others. So that is something to be aware of. So that's really interesting. 1968, a lot of shifts were happening. People were protesting the Vietnam War, all of this. And we can kind of see a similar energy surfacing
Mm-hmm.
this coming year. Then we have Jupiter. Now, this is also really interesting. Right now Jupiter is in Taurus, but shortly after, on May 14th, Jupiter enters Gemini. And excuse me, I'm just getting over a cold, so I apologize for my voice. So Jupiter enters Gemini, and it's really interesting because Jupiter is going to move very, very, very quickly through Gemini. In the same year, usually Jupiter stays in one sign per year. It's going to go into Cancer in October. Now, this is a very positive time. Jupiter gets exalted in Cancer, and Jupiter is the great benefic. So when all of these major planets are going to be in Pisces, what's interesting, I'm just going to backtrack a little bit, is that um, Venus gets exalted in Pisces. She can express her highest significations in Pisces. It's usually a beautiful time, but with all these other planets there, it's difficult for any one planet to be able to fully express itself, right? There's a tug of war with that planetary pileup. But Jupiter during this time is still sitting in Taurus, which is ruled by Venus, and Venus is in Pisces, which in the Vedic system is ruled by Jupiter. So they have what's called a parivartana yoga. There's a mutual exchange of placement. So this Jupiter is the one planet who can help us during this year and really be strong in like trying to balance out any of the calamities that can occur during this eclipse and onwards. So that's important to remember. And when it goes into Gemini, it will be aspecting when Rahu moves a few days later, it will be aspecting Rahu as well. So that's going to help the significations of Rahu express in a more positive, beneficial way. And Rahu is very strong in Aquarius. He's the co-ruler of Aquarius. So when we go through the slides, you'll see it's, inventions that can help humanity, new technologies, new inventions. That's just going to skyrocket. And because of Jupiter's speed through Gemini, all of the significations of Gemini will expand very rapidly. So it goes in May 14th, then it goes into Cancer on October 18th for a couple of months, less than a couple of months, but it just stays. It's so interesting. It doesn't really move deeply into Cancer. It stays at around 0 degrees this whole time. So whenever any planet is on one particular degree, kind of stationed, if you will, not moving, it has a lot of power to be able to express itself, right? It's very solid. So the things that are going to change have this power to not only stabilize, but staying power as well. And of course, Jupiter retrogrades every year, so it's going to retrograde in Cancer starting on November 12th, and then it moves back into Gemini. So it's very interesting and it's very helpful as well. And then, of course, Rahu changes sign, Ketu changes sign. Rahu goes in a very comfortable position for himself in Aquarius. Like I just mentioned, there's going to be a growth in technology, in new inventions, like the whole landscape of how we go about doing things is going to change drastically. And with Ketu moving into Leo, it's also a very interesting sign placement for Ketu because Ketu gets what's known as Ayush exaltation in Leo. So it does well. Ayush means life, longevity, health. And in Leo, again, it's the sign of the rulers. So
Mm.
Ketu is quite powerful there. And as you know, Ketu has this tendency to cut things off, withdraw things, get rid of things. So again, this whole change in world leadership, sudden surprises, because Ketu is like the wild card of the planetary pantheon. It's past life karmas. It's all things from the past. And so we never know really the way it's going to express. We do know that it's known as the moksha karaka. So it liberates. And that liberation is often painful because we're not ready to let go.
Mm.
So that is also another indication. When Rahu and Ketu move into Aquarius and Leo, it's going to form what's known as a Kala Sarpa Yoga in the sky, which means all the planets are in between the Rahu and the Ketu axis. Now, Pluto is not in that axis, but in the Vedic system, we don't take into account the outer planets, but Neptune and Uranus are also inside of that. So it's like the planets are swallowed in the belly of the beast. So that puts a great amount of pressure on all the other planets to be able to function. And that Kalasarpa yoga also lasts for a couple of months until Mars transits conjuncts Ketu and moves into Virgo. Then Mars will break that Kalasarpa yoga. So how would it break? Again, the significations of Mars are difficult. It does indicate aggression, anger, war, things of that nature. So something can also happen around that time when Mars breaks through the Kalasarpa Yoga. The people might be feeling under pressure, unable to move forward, confused, not sure what direction to go. Then something can happen. Well, Mars can indicate something happening to get that energy
Then we have the
moving.
Kala Sarpa yoga. Almost for 2 years, it would form very often in
Yes.
the lockdowns. So
We
that's
did. We did
we were
have that.
literally
And it's
locked.
interesting that you brought, go ahead.
No, that was all I wanted to say because
It's
we know
interesting that
more
you brought
about
that
Kala
up
Sarpa. Yeah.
because I did also pull, like what I did is I put all these charts to show you guys the formations, but I also pulled the chart for the great conjunction that Jupiter and Saturn made back in December, like late December 2019, early January 2019, when they were together in the same sign on the Vedic side in Sagittarius, which was the trigger for all of this stuff that happened in 2020. So it's interesting because Jupiter and Saturn are also going to be in Kendra to each other, which in Western terminology that they're going to be in a square to each other when Jupiter moves into Gemini. So that energy, right, gets triggered again. Not the same energy, but similar sort of energy. Okay. Now, usually when I'm looking at the year ahead, I don't look so much at the faster moving planets because it's the slower moving planets that really lend its energies because faster moving planets are moving all the time. But I this year is different because Mars has been in Gemini and Cancer for nearly a year, like 10 months. It started in August of this year, and it moved into Gemini, and then it moved into Cancer in October of this year. Then it retrograded. So right now we have Mars in Cancer, and it will be retrograding in Cancer. It's retrograde right now until the 20th of January, where it will stay in Gemini until the 4th of April, and then in April move back into Cancer. So this section of the sky, if you have lots of planets there, depending on what houses these two signs fall in, there's been a lot of frustration and changes and misunderstandings and just a lot of difficult energy because Mars, I'm so sorry, Mars is debilitated in Cancer. And whenever I see the planet Mars in Cancer in personal horoscopes, it shows a great deal of wanting to protect one's home. So here I see there's going to be a lot of action around themes like homeland security, yeah, domestic uh, terrorism, right? Things of that nature. There can be a very strong police typing or policing
Mm-hmm.
of the homelands.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We're already wondering if that's not what the drones are doing. You know,
Yeah, there's drones.
those drones. Yeah.
It could be actually. And when I was researching, there's also has been this very quiet sort of movement where they're building in the United States these what they're calling cop cities as well. I don't know if you've heard about this, Lada, but
Oh.
they're doing it in Atlanta. They're doing it all over the United States, and it's this rollout of having these cop cities where, like surveillance and things like
Yes.
this,
Yes.
police presence is going to increase under, for our safety, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's
It's always for the safety. It's always
Mars in Cancer, right?
yes, Mars and
Yeah,
Cancer.
it's very strongly indicated. And then we also have Venus. Now, Venus usually moves through a sign, relatively quickly, but Venus is going to be in Pisces for a really long time as well. So we have all these planets hovering in certain areas of the sky for a while. And Venus is going to enter Pisces on the 27th of January, and it's going to stay there until the end of May. So, in one way,
Yeah.
Pisces, Venus in Pisces is usually a very beautiful time, but Venus indicates, women's rights, females. It also indicates luxuries. It indicates liquid money, right? It's money, it's food, it's all the things that make you sustain you, nourish you, make you feel good, right? It's the ruler of Taurus. So Taurus is finances, right? It's banking, it's all of these things. So usually Venus there is very positive, but and it will still be positive. Like it's not all bad. Let me just say that right now. There's nothing all bad, but there are a lot of like very interesting indications. And of course, according to your chart placements, you can really have a great year. I don't want to, you know, put it in anyone's head that it's going to be a terrible year. I like to say it's going to be an interesting year. So, so it will still have significations. It will still be able to express, but there's going to be that eclipse. Rahu is still there. Then Saturn comes in, and there's going to be a period of time between like the 3rd of February to the 24th of April. So, for quite a few months there where, Venus is going to go retrograde, it's going to be conjuncting with Rahu, with Saturn. Luckily, when Venus is with Saturn, is not the worst energy. When Venus is with Saturn, it's like you can be making long-term commitments to things. There's, a staying power when those two get together. When Venus is with Rahu, it can also show people making poor choices in their relationships as well. And there could be some element of deceit when Rahu is with Venus. So just things to be aware of. The most important thing during all of this is to stay grounded, centered, and not, freak out, to stay in a balanced state of mind. But it is difficult, for Venus to express during that window. The good news again is it is getting support from Jupiter because they do have this mutual sign exchange, which is called a Parivartana Yoga, which will help. They're the two great benefics, Jupiter and Saturn. And usually they have different areas that they like to rule over, right? Jupiter usually rules over the more spiritual, the higher wisdom, the knowledge. And Venus rules over the material. So they both give blessings, but in different areas. But I think due to all of this other planetary commotion that's going on, Jupiter and Venus are going to have to come together and join forces for the good.
Mm.
So this is our savior, both of
Yes.
these
Yes.
planets.
Fascinating.
And then, of course, we have good old Mercury, and Mercury is debilitated in Pisces. So it's very hard for Mercury to analyze, right? Pisces is the ocean. Mercury is the analyzing, the intellectual, the making sense of things. So when it's in Pisces, it's very hard for it to categorize things because it's just this big ocean of consciousness. So that's why it gets debilitated, but it will be with Venus. It will be with the exalted Venus in Pisces. So that helps to uplift Mercury. But it just indicates in a general manner, like the inability to intellectualize and make sense of things. So when these events happen, it's going to be hard for us. Most of us will be in disbelief, things won't make sense, kind of a similar energy to when the corona happened and people were just not
Mhm.
understanding what was happening,
Mhm.
right? So
Mhm.
these indications are up. So it's in Pisces and it also goes retrograde in Pisces. So again, for Mercury, Mercury transits really quickly through the signs. It's going to be in Pisces for a really long time as well, until the 6th of May. And as you know, every year when we have the Mercury retrogrades, they're retrograding in the same element.
Yes.
So this year, Mercury retrograde is going to affect all the water signs. So water is a big theme for
That's
2025.
exactly. I just recorded my video for 2025, and the first 20 minutes I'm talking, it's all water. Even in Western,
Yeah,
it's all water. All the planets are retrograde there. And this is the big word for 2025. So you see, it's true. All roads lead to Rome. We're coming.
they all do. See, I love it. So then what I did, because it was so hard with so many different movements, right? It was so hard for me to think of a way to be able to present it in a way that, because there's so many dates to keep track of, so much to keep track of, even I was confusing myself. So what I did is I put together some key words that indicate possibilities of these planets in certain signs.
Oh,
And then what I'll do is I made charts for key dates and we'll just have a look at the different charts, okay?
awesome.
So, and please, Lada, feel free to join in because I love that the Western and the Vedic are just sort of, lining up in the indications
This
for
year they are. It's crazy. But
double
I love
power.
the Vedic interpretation because it does add the because for me tropical zodiac is more material, while Vedic is deeper, more spiritual, and because it is used for the big cycles of history as well. So to give
Yeah.
a perspective of what's manifesting. So
Yeah, it's
interesting.
a very high spiritual science, it comes from the Vedas themselves, which are the ancient spiritual books of India. So it's very spiritualized. In fact, all of our remedies are also very spiritual remedies. I mean, so it's all about that. So let's get move to Saturn in Pisces. Now, this is just a recap of what I spoke about, right? Um, 7 planets if we include Chiron and Neptune there in Pisces. So it's a big one.
I'm
Um,
thinking either tsunamis or something coming over us like a wave.
yeah,
And
it
Pisces
could
is
be,
sometimes grieving or healing. I don't know what is Pisces to. There's so many things it can be.
yeah, there's a lot of indications, there's, mass hospitalizations. There could be some major kind of, glacier or because, Saturn is the breaking,
Mm,
right?
yeah. And
So
Saturn
there
is
could be,
ice. Pisces.
yeah.
Yeah.
There could be something along that lines. There's the solar eclipse. Uranus enters Taurus. I talked about the next day about Chaitra Shukla Pratipad and how the deity is Vishwavasu, which it indicates a lighter year with ups and downs. I can't say that it's going to be like just everything's going to be so much better, but it's not going to be as intense as far as it was this year with all of the wars and the fighting. There could even be some sort of ceasefire or some sort of signing of agreements as well on the table this year. Then we have a very interesting formation, and when I go over the charts, I can show you. Um, but it forms when this is happening, is forming a Shula Yoga. So that comes from the word Trishul, which is the trident of Lord Shiva, or you can even say the trident of Neptune. And all 3 planets, not including the outer planets, but all the planets, sorry, are going to be in 3 signs, forming what looks like a pitchfork or a trident in the zodiac. And this can indicate some sort of painful event as well, something that hurts, something that stings, some sort of a jolt to our systems.
Mm,
And then when Saturn and Rahu conjunct on April 21st, it will also have that aspect of a debilitated Mars from the sign of Cancer. So again, I do feel like whatever events happen around that time is going to cause some sort of a uprising in Mars kind of signification. So whether that's military, whether that's police, something about Homeland Security,
mm.
the chances of that happening are quite high. Actually, I wonder if I can just quickly stop sharing this screen and share with you the charts here, just so you can see that Shula Yoga. occurring. So on March 21st, let's see here. No, it's here. Sorry. Um, so we have all the planets. You see, one, two, three, opposing Ketu.
Yeah.
Um, so this is what's called the Shula Yoga. And speaking of Ketu, when this eclipse happens, um, Mars is going to be aspecting Ketu as well with
Mm.
its fourth aspect. And Jupiter is going to be aspecting Ketu as well with its fifth aspect. So all of the planets, really, all of the signs are involved in this eclipse in one way or another. Either they're all sitting with Rahu and Sun and Moon, or they're giving their aspect to Ketu, which is the trigger
Mm.
for the past sort of karmas to come into effect. I hope that helps. I think I made an astro chart of it as well. Yeah, there we go. Can you
Great.
see that?
Yes. Everything
Yeah. So
Pisces.
there's that.
Yeah.
There's that Shula yoga. And even though these planets are here, they're actually here. They can't fit into here. So one, two, and three, right?
Wow.
So yeah, it's a big, big time um, for all of us, for all of humanity. And things happen, but it's what do we do with it that matters, right? So now here are the key words, some indications for Saturn in Pisces. Now, again, Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac. So it's a great ending, a great cycle ending. And as you know, Saturn takes 30 years to complete one revolution around the sun. So it's a really big ending. What happens when Saturn is in Pisces is the ending of the last 30 years and the planting the seed for the next big Saturn cycle. Saturn's restrictions, endings. Saturn, because it is the Vata Vayu element, it indicates also a heightening of fear.
Mm-hmm.
Saturn and Rahu together, right? Really bring a lot of fear, especially with Rahu. There's delusion, but that's the next little paragraph here. Pisces is hospitals, Pisces is illness, Pisces is letting go. The place where Saturn and Rahu is going to conjoin when Saturn moves into Pisces is Purva Bhadrapada. Now, these two nakshatras, the three nakshatras in Pisces, right? The last one is Revati, which is a very soft, beneficial nakshatra, which indicates like leading the shepherd leading the flock home to
Yeah.
safety. But the previous two are quite intense. Uttara Bhadrapada is less intense than Purva Bhadrapada, and this conjunction is happening in Purva Bhadrapada. And I'd made a huge, it's so interesting and cosmic. I made a whole video about just these two nakshatras, right? The energy of Purva Bhadrapada is one of like a sudden awakening, a sudden upliftment, an upward movement. It's more of a fire energy. And then the energy of Uttara Bhadrapada is more of a water energy. Again, that of the serpent of the deep, but both are connected to the deep esoteric serpent energies which are needed in order for us to evolve, basically, right? If you know the story of the churning of the ocean, right? This is a great story in the Vedic mythology. They have to use the serpent, right, as a churning rope right? To bring up the nectar of immortality. If you look at the Kundalini Shakti, it's a coiled serpent, right? So both of these Bhadrapada nakshatras are connected to the serpent. And the serpent energy is the year of the snake,
On that.
right? We're going to be in the Kala Sarpa
Oh,
yoga. So
so
this it's yeah, this churning, this sort of back and forth kind of has to happen in order to bring out the things that need to come out, in order to purify, in order to heal. A lot of times when we ourselves are sick or not feeling well or dealing with long-term diseases, when we go through the healing process, it can feel worse before it feels better, right? So the healing process, this is what has to, this churning has to happen. This back and forth has to happen. And during this great churning of the cosmic ocean, think about it, right? Pisces is the ocean. It also indicates the disillusion of our egos, of to unity consciousness, collective consciousness, cosmic divine consciousness. So when this churning happens, the very first thing that came out of the Milky Way, it's basically the Milky Way, it's the ocean of milk, was the poison. The poison first came out before
mm,
all the other things were able to come
mm,
out and be given to humanity, to be given to the gods, right? In service of use. And the very last thing, of course, that came out was that nectar that they were after. So this is a whole beginning of a process of churning. Lord Shiva, right? The reason he's blue is because he was the only one who can drink that poison and not swallow it. He held it in his throat. He did that to save the cosmos from being thrown into destruction.
mm,
So there are indications that there are things of a venomous,
mhm.
poisonous nature that will come about first. But then Saturn being in Pisces will slowly do the hard work to bring about the healing.
Could it be literal, like poisonous gases of some sort? Maybe even that. Yeah, we can't say for sure, but oh,
It could be.
mhm.
It could be. I mean, like to see, to see like a planetary lineup like this,
Yeah.
right? There's a lot of indications. There's a lot of indications. It could be. I'm not going to say yes, but I'm not going to
Yes,
say no.
God only knows. We're trying to figure out what
Right? So then, of
astrology.
course, there could be waterborne diseases as well. The fear is very heightened because of Saturn. Saturn brings fear. Saturn brings anxiety. Usually as a traditional Vedic astrologer, I don't use the outer planets, but in this case, I am going to talk about Neptune as well, right? Because there is this this confusion caused, especially also with Rahu and Neptune, right?
Mhm.
So there's misdirection as well. There's like misdirection of awareness. Okay, so there could be some things that are not necessarily true that are used so that we don't pay attention to other things that are happening in the world. There's also the possibility of, unity. It's always possible in Pisces, especially when all these planets are in Pisces. Philosophy, losing of consciousness, drowning. There could be uprising. Saturn separates, it's a separating factor. So on the one hand, people are wanting to unite, but for some reason, there's something keeping them from
Mhm.
uniting. Isolation, again, that's one of the big indicators of Saturn. Saturn makes us feel alone and isolated a lot of times. There could be a loss of faith because Pisces is this great sign of the higher divinity and faith. And with Saturn there could be more skepticism. But with all of this, it can lead, if we do it properly, to self-awareness through learning our karmic lessons. There could be a mass awakening. Of course, Rahu, Neptune, secrecy, phobias. In the body, there could be more and more diseases related to water retention. And of course, we have our favorite cyclones and hurricanes and so on. Um, with the Saturn conjunct Rahu, of course, again, winds of sudden change, a lot of instability, pressure, turbulence, deception. There could be psychological warfare, which going back to these drones, they could be seeing how the people are reacting without knowing, right? Like in I think it was 1936, so 80, 90 years ago, was when Orson Welles broadcasted the War of the Worlds, right? And there was a mass hysteria going on. So, there could be mass hysteria, fear, disbelief, a loss of consciousness, of wanting to escape from reality, Rahu wants to escape from reality. He doesn't want to deal with the here and now. Major expenses, losses, airborne disease, because Saturn and Rahu are the air element.
Yeah.
Spiritual delusion, all sorts of theories. Already it's happening, right?
Yeah. Wow.
So,
And
illness.
Pisces would be aliens, the unknown.
Yeah, I'm
Exactly.
coming to that.
All right, sorry. You've
There's
covered
also,
everything.
what's that?
You've covered everything. I feel like my video is like what you're talking about.
Oh, really?
Yes, it's so similar.
I always work very hard in presenting for you, Lada. I try and
No,
cover
it's
all the
amazing.
bases.
Thank you.
We're on the same page. Um, One of the indications also is like clinging to the old, right? Saturn represents things of the establishment, things that are old. So like not letting go, not going with the flow, but really like hunkering down and wanting things to stay the same. And then confusion with Rahu and anxiety with Saturn. All right. So the May eclipse. Yeah, here's where I talk about the aliens. So major life changes, endings, mass
Uh, that must be the March eclipse, not May.
yes. Oh, thank you. I put May. Thank you.
Yeah, it's just because you're talking about the March eclipse before, yeah.
It's March. Yeah, I made a mistake. Thank you for pointing that out, Lada. Yes, I meant to say March. Um, So, mass confusion, crisis, spiritual awakening, turbulence, psychological fear, because Pisces rules our subconscious psychological minds, right? So with all of these planets, it can cause a lot of fear, confusion, chaos, disbelief, psyops,
Mm.
rebellion, mass illness, mass hysteria, uprisings. I think assassination attempts, deceit, denial, alien disclosure, and extraordinary
Here for the
events.
magical and
And
unbelievable.
magical. Yes.
Magical and unbelievable, yeah. Wow.
So those are really sort of the indications for this pileup in Pisces, the conjunction with Rahu and Saturn. And also in general, Saturn is just entering into Pisces. He's going to stay there for 2.5, 3 years until 2028. So 3 years roughly. So, he's got his work cut out for him. Luckily, Saturn and Jupiter are very neutral to each other. They're not like great enemies. They kind of let each other do their thing. When when Jupiter moves into Cancer, it will help the sign of Pisces because it will be aspecting Pisces. So, we have a few years for Saturn to work its magic. It's just that when any planet moves into a sign, it's not at its strongest to be able to put things in order because it's just getting used to a very brand new environment with all these other planets there, kind of it's hard for him to really get his work done.
Hmm.
But and he's going to be in those beginning degrees of Pisces for the whole year, more or less. I think he just goes the highest in the Vedic chart, the highest maybe 5 degrees max. And then, he retrogrades. So he's going to be in those beginning areas of Pisces. And then the keywords for Jupiter and Gemini, right? I think the way we are going to be moving, right? Because Gemini is a very it's a sign for moving, communicating, commerce, intelligence. With Jupiter there, it's going to expand all of those significations. Transportation is going to be key. The way we get around. So there's going to be changes in that, intellectual growth, inventions, actually expansion in commerce. Um, it could also indicate education, students uprising and protesting, and it will expand the way, not only with transportation, but the way that we travel. And then Rahu in Aquarius is going to be really strong, really strong. When Rahu is in Aquarius, it's like out of the box things, inventions, creativity, technology, new growth in infrastructure, things that are going to, even though there's all of this ending happening, there's going to be new advancements to help expand us as a society. Here's where I didn't put it in the keywords, but this whole Space Force thing can be launched as well. New different tech, just like the AI, all of this for the next year and a half is going to go bonkers. It's going to be berserk. So I see a lot of growth in new ways of expanding our reach.
And in Western astrology, we also see the same through Pluto in Aquarius. So again, it
Wow.
repeats.
Yeah, Pluto in the Vedic system is still in Capricorn. So what that shows me is that all of this growth that's possible, there's going to be this old established regime, right? The
Mhm.
old boys club
Yes.
that wants to,
Yes.
yeah, you know what I'm saying, wants to hold on
Hold
to
on the
that.
power and
Yeah. So
absolutely.
then keywords in Ketu for Leo, again, they're the government basically, Leo, right? The rulers. So there can be a lot of shifts happening in politics and power struggles, potential loss of certain political leaders. And, you know, in a way, we've already seen this kind of shift happening. Look at what just happened in Syria, right?
Hmm.
The rebels just came in. Assad was in power for 50 years. And it was like, okay, see ya. And it changed like this in a blink of an eye.
Wow.
So
Hmm.
it's lots of things in that realm are very, very possible. And then lastly, my last slide here is Mars in Cancer, which I touched on. Political paranoia, homeland security, border control, immigration issues, national security, all of those things. Because Mars in Cancer is wanting to protect the home.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Wow, that's
So
so in depth and so makes so much sense and so well explained. Thank you
thank
so much,
you.
Parvati.
My
It's
pleasure, Lada.
even for someone who knows absolutely no astrology. I know they learned a lot and they understood everything, the way you presented it for us.
Oh, thank you so
Clear,
much.
simple, very to understand terms. Thank you, Parvati. Again, if anyone would like to contact Parvati for a personal reading, or she also does, can you say exactly what it is? You get together in group and you discuss horoscopes and you
Yes, yeah, I have a mentorship, a 6-week mentorship program, but I will be leaving in January to go to India to further my knowledge and my studies with my Jyotish astrology guru, my teacher. So when I get back from India, probably in the spring, I will resume those courses. For now, until January 18th or so, I'm only
personally.
available for
Just don't
readings.
travel this March. It looks crazy.
I
Especially,
know, but I'll be in a very spiritual place.
yes, you've been an ashram type of.
Yes, I'll be in a very, very highly
You're safe
spiritual
there
place. Yeah,
and
yeah.
far away from water.
Yeah, and we'll all be, lending our energies and prayers and meditations, because that's the other thing to remember that in this world, there are a lot of highly spiritual people. They're just not out in the open, but they're doing a lot of work for the benefit of humanity. So, you know,
Thank you for reminding us this because we only hear about the bad things in the news. And
yes,
thank you that there is thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of those people are
yes.
behind the scenes. And some of them might be your neighbor that you know that you're not aware he has a powerful, prayerful presence. Or yes, so
Yeah,
thank
there's
you.
There's huge group meditations all over the world, like this is the thing when we come together, right? And we really focus our attention and intention on our true divinity and not get lost in all the noise of what's happening externally. We are more powerful. It's beyond belief how powerful we can be, and nothing can hold us down when we come together. So I'm wishing everybody a beautiful 2025. I hope my presentation is not meant to scare you. It's just, a little foreshadowing of the possibilities. But, nothing is all light, nothing is all dark. And the good news is when the dark increases, so does the light.
Beautiful. And this healing crisis you were talking about, people can focus on that as well. Thank you,
Yes.
Parvati. Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone,
Lada.
for joining us uh, and for the amazing knowledge. And we can't wait to see you soon again, Parvati, with the rest of the
Sounds good.
nakshatras. Thank
Nice.
you.
All
Bye-bye.
right. Bye.